Hello there, Louisiana, and welcome to Odds and Ends here on bet.nola.com. I'm Zach Ewing along with Jim Derry, and this is your Monday football betting weekend recap. It's brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook and us here at bet.nola.com, and we're excited to look back at Week 4 in college football, Week 3 in the NFL. Also, look ahead to Monday Night Football tonight with the Eagles and the Cowboys. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody to sign up for our bet.nola.com newsletter. It's easy to do. You just go to nola.com/odds, and you are entered to win a $250 cash giveaway if you sign up. That's all you got to do. Put in your email address, get our newsletter every morning, and you will be ready to go. Jim, another weekend. We'll see this in a minute. The dogs really barked this weekend in college football and the NFL.
It's a good thing the contest is against Carville and not against me, or this company might go broke. I'm just, it is what it is. It was a weird weekend. It was an exciting weekend. We went in thinking it wasn't going to be that great of a college football weekend, but I truly enjoyed Saturday, and especially with LSU. Doing that live lines blog that we do, kind of following it throughout. LSU, if anyone bet Mississippi State in the game, they were in the money. If you kept betting Mississippi State throughout the game, the odds are even better. Then you did pretty well. And if you took LSU before the game started and bet Mississippi State throughout the game, man, you were a rich man or woman this weekend.
Yeah, let's take a look at those college results because it's interesting you bring that up. There's two ways to look at this if you're an LSU fan. And one is that it's like, look, they made the big plays. They won a road SEC game. This is fantastic. This is exactly what they wanted to do. And if you bet on them, they covered the 2.5-point spread. The other way to look at it is on a yards per play basis, Mississippi State was better. You take away a couple of turnovers, Mississippi State was better. They had the ball across the 54 consecutive times in the first half, and I think got 3 points out of it. And so it's like, if you look at it the other way, LSU still has some problems and easily could have lost this game if they weren't coming up with the turnovers in the big plays. So it's, obviously you want to win the game, and that's first and foremost the most important thing. LSU's 3-1 going back home to face Auburn last week. But Jim, it's a weird feeling. I feel like it's not all good.
It's not, but it's kind of like what I said. One of the things that I did get right was I really thought LSU was going to come out and play a lot better this weekend, and they did. Sure, they let Mississippi State back in it, but it was one of those games where I don't think the final score kind of indicated how much better LSU was than Mississippi State in that game. They kind of did what they needed to do in the end to make sure they hung on. They gave Mississippi State a chance to maybe be an onside kick away from either tying or winning the ball game, some weird ending like Baltimore/Detroit yesterday. But overall, I really liked what I saw, and it was certainly better than last year, and it gives them momentum to go into their SEC home opener this weekend. Although, and I know we'll get to it in just a minute, but I don't understand that line at all, and we'll talk about that in just a moment.
Yeah, I don't either. And the other point is, besides, I think they have a non-conference game with UL Monroe late in the year, but besides that one, things really don't get any easier than they were Saturday. I mean, you could say home against Auburn or at Kentucky is equal maybe to at Mississippi State, but every other game they've got is going to be tough. And so did they raise their level? Yes. Are they going to have to raise it more? Also, yes. The rest of the college results, Notre Dame with a big win. Now, there's an example of a game where this final score, I don't think indicated how close the game was. I believe it was like 17-13 Notre Dame. In fact, Wisconsin had a 13-10 lead.
It was 13-10 lead, yeah.
Yeah, maybe at the end of the third quarter or early fourth quarter, and Notre Dame just scored. They scored a special teams touchdown, 2 defensive touchdowns, and kind of turned it into a laugher. And that's another one I want to look at. I believe Notre Dame is a dog against Cincinnati next week. And that just goes to show you that even though they're winning games, and this one obviously an impressive final score, the sharps and the books are not totally respecting the Irish anymore, or still.
No, nor should they. And another, I got so disheartened with that Wisconsin pick that I didn't make any more plays Saturday. I just watched football, which of course came back to bite me because I loved Arkansas and I loved Florida, and so I didn't play either one of them, and it gave me a little boost. But you never know what's going to happen. And the one that sticks out to me on this list is Arkansas. I thought Texas A&M was overrated. So I love what the Razorbacks are doing right now, but they have just I think don't they play Alabama next week, or
Arkansas's Georgia.
I knew it was one of the two biggies. So we'll really see what they're made out of this week. But I love Arkansas, and I love what they're doing. What a change in just a couple of years. And then Florida, they're going to be fine as long as they're not playing Alabama, Georgia, I think. And they showed it against a Tennessee team that's really not very good. And when are we going to stop thinking Oklahoma is one of the best teams in the country?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Oklahoma. They can't score any points. Spencer Rattler was the Heisman favorite going into the season, looked awful. Speaking of awful, I had an awful day. Awful. I mean, I couldn't replicate that level of I'm trying to think of something that doesn't include a profanity, but that level of awfulness if I tried. I think I was 0-6 on my best bets. Yeah. I mean, it was like if you faded me, you were rich. That it was and bring that list back up one more time. Like Arkansas, I was wrong on that. Okay. Arkansas lost their starting quarterback and still dominated A&M. I was flat wrong on that. Florida, Tennessee, I'll give myself half a pass. Tennessee probably should have covered 19 there. It was 17-14 at halftime. It was still 31-14. Florida added a touchdown real late, and then Tennessee got inside the 20 and couldn't finish its drive late. I mean, it's one of those gambling toss-up games. So, and Notre Dame, Wisconsin, we talked about was a weird game because Wisconsin could have actually won that game despite what the final score was. But anyway, there was Wyoming, UConn was another one I picked where I thought Wyoming blow them out. They barely won. I was dead wrong on that. I mean, I'm not trying to excuse myself. Some of these were a little bit funny. And you have some bad luck combined with bad picks, and that's what happens. But interesting day in college football. Clemson, the other one we didn't talk about there.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about Clemson losing.
Yeah, Clemson lost and really should have lost in regulation and then got away with it because NC State missed a couple field goals and then lost in overtime anyway. So, Clemson's clearly not among the elite this year. I don't know that the ACC has a path to get a team in the playoff. North Carolina's lost. I'd have to. Boston College, I think, is undefeated. They beat Missouri in overtime, but they're not a playoff team. I mean, it's the ACC already looks like the shutout.
Yeah, I think the ACC is done, and I don't know that Clemson really. If you talk about them going forward, even if they won that game, I couldn't see a path for them to make it all the way to the playoff. Of course, they are Clemson, and Dabo gets a lot of love, but we could have a 2 SEC team in the playoffs this year. It certainly could happen the way that it's looking right now if things keep going the trend. But I really, what ticks me off is, and I kind of touched on it, but all the picks that I'm making that aren't on big bucks, people say sure. The picks that I'm not making on big bucks or on our weekly picks are hitting. The ones that I'm picking, I look like a fool. So I don't know what's going on. We got to fix this.
Sure, Jim. Sure. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to like flip coins now. Like I'm gonna make a list of about 16 picks and I'm gonna flip coins. Is this one on big bucks? Is this one on big? No, I don't know.
Put them all on big bucks, man. You got the budget.
Put them all on. Well, I'm not the way I'm going. I'm gonna lose all my.
You might. We'll talk more about that on Thursday. Jim's down to what, $1,700 now or something like that out of 2,000 after just 3 weeks. So you got some work to do. It's all right though. I got some work to do after this week as well.
It's still September.
You mentioned the playoff could easily be 2 SEC teams, could also easily be 2 Big Ten teams. I know Ohio State doesn't look like they normally do, but when you have Iowa undefeated, Michigan undefeated, Penn State undefeated, I mean, there are some possibilities in the Big Ten as well. So will be interesting to see that. Let's take a look at NFL results now, moving from Saturday to Sunday as we recap the weekend. And again, James Carville actually barked like a dog on Thursday during the At the Book show, like literally barked. You got to go back and listen to it if you haven't already. And I don't know if that was like magical properties or something, but look at the right side of that screen and who covered the big games of the weekend. All underdogs, all of them. I mean, the Lions lost outright on a 66-yard field goal, which was absolutely ridiculous by Justin Tucker, but still easily covered.
Justin Tucker.
I covered a teaser on that, so I was happy with that. Saints won easily. Chargers won outright as a dog. Bengals won outright as a dog. Rams and Pat. I mean, not only are these all covers, but 5 of the 6 were outright wins, Jim.
Well, one of the things that I right for sure was the Rams. Can we stop saying Tampa Bay. I mean, Tom Brady is not God. Okay, I don't care what anyone says. You can call him the GOAT if you want. I still don't think he's the GOAT, but that's okay. That's a story for another day. But the Buccaneers' defensive secondary is not good. They haven't been good throughout the early part of the season. They played a mediocre Dallas team and a really bad Falcons team at home, just getting fired up from the Super Bowl stuff, Super Bowl hangover. And then they went in and traveled out west and played the team I think is the best team in the NFL, in the Los Angeles Rams. And that 24 for the Buccaneers is a little bit misleading because it was 34-17 until with about a minute and something left. So the Rams thoroughly dominated that game, especially in the second half, wore them down. Big holes in the Tampa Bay secondary. Now, they were without JPP, so they had some issues along the front line, and they couldn't get any pressure on Stafford. But they're not as good as everybody thinks they are. And then shout out to Justin Tucker, saving 2 of my 5 knockout picks by kicking a 66-yard field goal. That divine intervention came through, bounces off the crossbar and into the net. And watching the fans' reactions reminds me of my young days of being a Saints fan.
That was one of the more ridiculous finishes. And then the Packers 49ers, by the way, ridiculous as well. The 49ers go down the field, complete their comeback, but they leave 37 seconds on the clock. And Aaron Rodgers says, well, I don't have any timeouts, but if you leave Devontae Adams open twice,
right,
I'll go ahead and get into field goal range and let my very good kicker Mason Crosby hit the winner. So it's just another NFL Sunday. The theater is just insane. I mean,
how does Devontae Adams get that wide open in the middle of the field?
What, the one guy you've got to cover? The one guy. Make somebody
you see
else
17? You see 17? Go find him. I mean, if you want to play a zone, that's fine. But find 17 and stick somebody on him.
The NFL, the football equivalent of a box and one or something. You've got to have somebody on him. Now, I've got a couple shares of Devontae Adams in fantasy league, so I was happy for the extra points. But I mean, what are we doing, San Francisco? What do you think?
Also, I had Green Bay against the spread and the money line, so I was happy about it as well. But 49ers fans, one of my best friends is a 49ers fan. I've said this on the air before. He went and bought his gold starters jersey, was in San Francisco last night. I always call it Candlestick. I know it's not Candlestick, but I don't care. But he was there, and he was sending me pictures. And after San Francisco scores, he sends me a text. That was fun. And I couldn't help it. When Mason Crosby kicked the field goal, I texted him back and said, that was funner. I'm not going to tell you what his response was, but
this is a family show, sort of.
It was a fun game.
Yeah, I mean, just the TV executives have to be doing cartwheels when stuff like that happens.
Sure.
You can't turn it off. I mean, you just right. My wife doesn't care a lick about football, and she's sitting there watching and going, "This game's insane. Why? What's going to happen next?" And you literally have to watch to the end. It's like the best reality TV show there could be.
It's funny, Zach. Real quick, it's funny you say that because my wife was outside doing some yard work, and when Tucker kicked the field goal, I don't know what I said or whatever, but I walked outside. I said, "The most amazing thing happened! NFL record field goal, 66 yards." She goes, "I know, I heard you. The whole neighborhood heard you."
This is why we have the jobs that we have. I mean, what else would we do with ourselves? So week 3 in the NFL wraps up tonight in Dallas. It's actually the Cowboys' home opener. They started a couple of road games in Tampa Bay and then in Los Angeles to face the Chargers, and they played pretty well. And I know you're high on the Cowboys, Jim, and 3.5 points is barely more than your home field advantage here. Your standard home field advantage is at about 2.5 points if you listen to the industry right now. So a little surprising. This line seemed light to you?
No. It seems right about on the number because we talk about, and I am high on the Cowboys this season. This game would scare me if I were a Cowboys fan, and I'm going to play it, but probably small. But I think the Eagles are better than they showed last week. I gave them no credit going into the season, but and I know it was Atlanta, but that defense is better than I thought it was. The Philly defense is much better than I thought it was going to be. Jalen Hurts the first couple games to me, and I know he didn't have outstanding numbers last week, but I think he's Kyler Murray light. So I'm really interested to see how the Eagles develop. as we go through the season. So I think numbers pretty spot on. I think it was 4 earlier in the week. And in fact, I think that's what I had it on my NFL picks. I do like Dallas. I think they win, but I think it's going to be another really good game, and I think it's going to be close throughout. And I kind of lean towards the under a little bit. I think that under is kind of high. That to me, that's a Dak Prescott number, a Dak / Jalen Hurts number, and all I think about his offense. But these two teams have shown that they can both play defense, especially for Dallas last week against the Chargers, holding the Chargers to, I believe, 14 points in an overtime game. And so it's going to come down to defense. Again, Eagles lose, I believe it was 17-11 or something like that against San Francisco. So both of these teams can play defense. So if there's any number that I don't understand, it's the over-under. I think it's a bit high.
No, I agree with you on that. The thing people don't realize about that Cowboys-Chargers game, it was low scoring in part because both teams were going on these super long drives. I mean, they're both ball control. If Dallas has its druthers, they'll run the ball first. They won't pass until Dak needs to pass. Now, against Tampa Bay in the opener, they had to, and so he threw for 400 and some odd yards. But they're gonna feed Zeke Elliott. They're gonna feed Tony Pollard. Maybe some short passes in there. They're going to try to establish the run, and that's going to be the key to this thing. If they can establish the run, the Eagles will be in trouble because I don't think nobody can really cover that passing game once it gets going if you've also got to worry about the run. But if you can make them one-dimensional, Philly does have very good defense, could maybe get a couple turnovers and possibly pull the upset. But
what's interesting, Zach, is that Philly has yet to play any kind of decent running game. That they opened up with Atlanta, who has no running game. Then they played San Francisco, who has Mostert's out, and they don't really have a running game either. So are they going to be able to stop Zeke and Pollard? What a great 1-2 punch. In fact, Zeke and Pollard probably are the two best running backs that they've faced yet so far this season, both of those guys.
Yeah, you very well may be right about that. I mean, especially in the opener, the Falcons really hadn't discovered Cordarrelle Patterson yet, who's trending like their number one running back right now over Mike Davis. So it's interesting. I mean, it's an old-fashioned NFC East battle. I agree with you. I think 52 points is too many. I mean, sometimes these games get into weird shootout situations, but I don't see that happening tonight. So I may play the under if I play anything tonight.
Yep, I agree.
All right. So that's sort of a recap of the week that was in football and the Monday night game to come. How about an early look? I like to do this on Mondays at next week's action. Starting in college football, again, these lines are from Caesars Sportsbook, the official odds provider of bet.nola.com and of Odds and Ends. College football week 5. We talked about last week. The slate looked a little underwhelming. This week is amazing. It's amazing. Just look at those first 4 games right there. I mean, obviously, everybody around here is going to be interested in the LSU game. That line opened at 4, has already ticked down to 3.5. And Jim, I'll let you give your thoughts on that. But also Arkansas, Georgia, no line on that yet because Arkansas quarterback KJ Jefferson's still questionable. Don't know if he'll play. Michigan, Wisconsin, a huge game in the Big Ten. And then Ole Miss, Alabama, the 2 Heisman favorites right now, Matt Corral of Ole Miss and Bryce Young of Alabama going head-to-head, and a top 25 battle in the Big 12 as well with Baylor and Oklahoma State.
Well, there's some weird lines on here. I mean, should Alabama be in a 4? I know it's Alabama, and it's kind of like Kansas City in the NFL. We're basically begging you to take Ole Miss because as well as they have played in their offense, but are we going to be fooled? And I don't know. That's going to be one I have to think about and go look at. But to me, when a line is really weird, I jump on the side that it's weird. And so speaking of that, LSU, there is no way on God's green earth that LSU should be a favorite over Auburn. And I don't care who's playing quarterback, and whether it's Bo Nix or TJ Finley. And shout out to my boy TJ. I texted him over the weekend. I told him to take it easy on his former team next week. The Ponchatoula grad who I covered for several years. I talked to his parents on Friday night, as a matter of fact. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. We don't know who's going to play quarterback, but again, why is LSU favorite? So that has me thinking that I'm going to lean towards LSU because the line's so weird and they're begging you to take Auburn.
I don't really understand it either. Auburn didn't look very good. They almost lost to Georgia Southern. Probably should have lost to Georgia Southern. Georgia State, I'm sorry.
Georgia State.
Raging Cajuns played Georgia Southern.
You could almost understand if it's Georgia Southern, who's perennially a pretty good team.
And Georgia State beat Tennessee in Neyland Stadium a couple years ago. But still, I mean, and that's listen, it's a letdown spot for Auburn. They had just come off the trip to Happy Valley to play Penn State in the whiteout, lost a close game. They've got Death Valley next week. I mean, it was the trap game of all trap games. Bo Nix was awful. TJ Finley saved the day. They caught a couple of breaks. There was a weird call in that game late that Auburn got a first down in that last drive that I can't remember the specifics of it, but I remember thinking it was a replay review, and I remember thinking that I would have decided the way that the refs didn't decide. Anyway, point being, they survived. Is that what's causing that? And then LSU won in Starkville. To me, that I thought this line would be more of a pick'em.
It's exactly what I thought it was going to be. In fact, going in, I like to visualize when I come home on Sunday nights, because I like to start visualizing what I think lines might be without looking. And then when I see some of these things, I'm like, what are these guys thinking? Maybe they know something that I don't. And guess what? They usually do. So I'm going to get – we'll see as the week plays out. But the public's going to be all over Auburn, I would think. And then Michigan, Wisconsin, as well as Michigan has played, I know it's on the road, to only be a 1-point favorite, basically a pick 'em over Wisconsin. I don't get that line either. I think the Wolverines should be like 5 or 6 point favorites. I think
analytics like Wisconsin, which is why, even though they lost to Penn State at home, lost to Notre Dame in Chicago, those games, maybe they performed better than the final score indicated. And so it's still a tough place to play. Michigan hadn't really played a lot away from home yet. It's going to be a tough game. I may stay away from that one. But that's certainly interesting. I think I will say this about Auburn. If you want to bet with your head and not your heart, and you like Auburn, get them now, because that number's going down to 3 or maybe
no doubt.
2.5. I think by the end of the week. And then the other one that you talk about, Alabama, Jim. Alabama 14.5. Circa Sports always unveils its college football lines on Sundays, several hours before any other book does. And they had Alabama -20 when they unveiled these lines. And it happens every week with Circa, where something gets screwed up, and they have one that's way off, and then when all the other books, including Caesars, come out with it later Sunday night or Monday morning, it's like, well, wait, how'd it go from 20 to 14.5? So I don't know what to make of that, except that 20 would have been way too many points, but people tend to inflate those lines on the Crimson Tide anyway.
I can tell you now this is going to be a no play for me, because if I didn't think of what the public's doing or what the line should be or whatever, I would instantaneously think that Ole Miss would be about a 9 or 10 point dog. And to see it this high, 14.5, and people love to bet on Alabama, so I don't think it's going to go down. If it goes down, you might lose the hook, but I don't think it's going to go down very much. So I'm not a big fan of this spread. I'm going to stay away from it. And you know what the over-under is?
I was just checking that, because I forgot to look earlier. Excuse me for looking at my phone during the show, but I had to find out. It's 78 at Caesars. Okay. So 78 of the over-under. It had to make it a high number.
I like the over.
I'm still not so sure I don't like the over.
I do. I'm not impressed by Alabama's defense all that much. I got to think that the over is in a decent shape. Ole Miss is scoring 60 points a game. They could score whatever they want. And I don't, it kind of reminds me of 6 or 7 years ago when Johnny Football was playing against Alabama, and it was like that game was like a pinball machine, and Texas A&M ended up winning, and just maybe the craziest game of that season. What a wonderful game that was. But I kind of like the over, and if I play it at all, that's probably what I'll play. 78's not high enough.
And if Alabama does stop Ole Miss, it's going to be with turnovers.
Yeah.
And as we all know, turnovers help the over better more often than not, because they're creating opportunities for the other offense, or you're even scoring. That Saints-Patriots game had no business even being close to the over last week, and it almost was, because the Saints set up a couple of touchdowns with turnovers. And so
doesn't this feel like one of the games where Nick Saban, the veins in his neck are going to be popping out? He's going to be slamming his headset down. He's going to be ticked off the entire game. It's going to be great. I love when he gets mad. He's going to be mad. I don't care if Alabama wins. I think it's going to be I would take Alabama, like I said, only because the line's funky. But this could be one of those games where it's going to be tight for a good while, lots of points scored, and every time Ole Miss scores, he's going to get ticked off. It's going to be wonderful.
Alabama's going to hop out to like a 38-10 lead with 2 pick sixes. And oh my gosh, Alabama's so great. And then Kiffin is going to go hog wild with Matt Corral in the second half. And it's going to end up like 48-38. And
I think
Saban's going to have a heart attack. And the game's going to go over. And Ole Miss is going to cover. And it's just, I mean, you talk about must-see TV. Thank God LSU plays at night because you could just watch that game at the tailgate all day. I mean, what a lot of fun that's going to be at 2:30 kickoff. NFL Week 4, looking ahead. Again, we got Eagles-Cowboys tonight. But next week's lines, the Saints 8-point chalk. They finally get to play in the Dome. They play a Giants team that frankly doesn't look very good. But news just came out. Teron Armstead is out. He'll be out several weeks. They still don't have Eric McCoy back. They still don't have I believe Traquan Smith is actually eligible to come back, but I haven't heard if he's going to. They don't have Michael Thomas. Don't have Marcus Davenport. I mean, we're still talking about a Saints team that is the walking wounded. Now, the defense is still very good. But 8-point chalk. Panthers, Cowboys, that line could move depending on what happens tonight, of course. But right now it's Cowboys minus 4.5 against the undefeated Carolina Panthers. And then speaking of undefeated, Jim, Cardinals, Rams, 2 undefeated teams meeting in L.A. Next week.
First things first, one word, Throckmorton, baby, Throckmorton. I mean, that Saints line, I talked about it with David Grubb in my podcast that's coming out tomorrow, but I can't believe how well the line played as a makeshift line without McCoy, without Teron Armstead. It says a lot to coaching. So we'll see. Obviously, that didn't play in the line or hasn't yet. We'll see if the line moves at all. And then Cowboys, people wondering why are the Cowboys a 4.5-point favorite over the Panthers. I'm surprised there's even a line because the Cowboys haven't played tonight. But Panthers without Christian McCaffrey goes to show you how much that line changes. And people still aren't respecting the Carolina Panthers. When are they going to realize that this defense is really good? And I know that they haven't played anybody, but at some point you got to give them love. And the lines makers finally wisened up to the Rams and realized that, hey, they're pretty good. They beat the heck out of the Buccaneers. So that's going to be an interesting game as well. I'm going to have a lot of thinking to do before I write my picks column tomorrow.
And I had to put Bucs Patriots as one of the games on here, even though I don't know that it's going to be that interesting or meaningful of a game. Not meaningful, put it that way, but interesting, of course, because Tom Brady's going back to Foxborough. And then Monday Night Football next week, what a treat that'll be. Raiders and Chargers. The Raiders going down the I-15 to L.A. and a big game in the AFC West, where AFC West, guess who's in last place? It's the Kansas City Chiefs.
That's right. Yeah, that's kind of crazy, isn't it? First time since 2015. 2015 is the first time that the Chiefs haven't been in last. And I'm talking about at any point after week 1, after week 6, it doesn't matter. 2015 was the last time that the Chiefs were in last place at any point in the season. But Bucs Patriots, I disagree. I think it's actually be quite interesting. The storyline, usually I'm not a big fan of storylines because they usually fizz out and they don't mean much with the game. Did you see Bill Belichick's response yesterday when he got asked basically about it? I mean, I know he always does this sort of thing, but I mean, you could just see that he wanted his eyes to bulge out of his head. It looked like his face was going to explode when they asked him, and yet he just said, "I'm more focused on New Orleans right now and what we need to do to clean up." I mean, it was his robot voice, but his face was anything but.
I mean, he had to know that was coming. He had to know that was coming. It's going to be coming all. And NBC busted out Adele last night, for God's sake, to try to promo this game. Like, they will pull out all the stops. You're right. It's going to be great theater. I don't know from a football, purely X's and O's perspective. I don't think
we lost Zach there for a minute, but I think it is good theater because it's Brady versus Belichick. And if you think those guys like each other, then if you think those two guys like each other, you're crazy. So I don't know if we lost you for a second there, Zach, but it's Belichick versus Brady.
I thought I lost you, but I guess it was me the whole time. So yeah.
But
absolutely.
Go ahead.
We may be having some problems here. Listen, let's wrap it up. Jim, I know you have a new episode of the Datitude podcast tomorrow, so tell the folks about what to look forward to on that.
Datitude podcast here on bet.nola.com. It comes out every Tuesday and Friday. Also on all the major players, wherever you get your podcast this week. On Tuesday's show, we will have David Grubb of 103.7 The Game in Lafayette. We talk about the Saints, Jameis Winston. I think he and I have different views on Jameis Winston, but I really appreciated his take. And then he also does a podcast called The Bird Calls. And we talked a little bit about the Pelicans and preseason and Zion's injury now that we found out that he had a broken foot. Where did that come from? Here we go again. We talk about David Griffin. So that's an interesting conversation. Then in a little while, I'm going to record an interview with Mike Triplett of ESPN. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Saints there, his take on everything going forward. And then on Friday, we're going to have Andrew Lopez of ESPN talk more about the Pelicans, as well as going to be a regular segment with my friend D Squared, Dave Corbier. And he'll give us his NFL picks along with my top 5 NFL picks of the week. Looking forward to that.
All right. And once again, you can sign up for our bet.nola.com newsletter. It's also called Odds and Ends, just like this show. And you sign up at nola.com/odds. Do it today, and you are entered automatically for a $250 cash giveaway. All you have to do is put in your email address and get the best betting news in the state of Louisiana in your inbox every morning. Who could say no to that? And then you might win some cash on top of it. That has been Odds and Ends for Monday, September the 27th. That's Jim Derry. I'm Zach. And we will see you Wednesday with the Fantasy Roundup and Thursday with At the Book.